Most people think of climate policy as a liberal issue, but one conservative is working really hard to take partisanship out of environmental politics. And it's trailblazing, it's picking up a lot of momentum.
In the 1990s, what percentage of Americans self-identified as environmentalists? Any guesses? 15? 70. You're close. 79% of Americans in 1990 self-identified as environmentalists. That number today is 38%.
But first, this all started as a love story. Hi, I'm Charles Loy and I'm a filmmaker. A few years ago, I was busy building a career in film, but I wasn't making anything straight from the heart. And then I met somebody. She loved trees and was restoring forests all across Asia. And I began to see the world through her eyes. The complex, interconnected forest, the deceptively simple tangle of life forms competing and cooperating, this wild, emerald planet she was putting her life into protecting. And one day, we began talking about bringing new life into this world together. But then we talked about climate change and the world that that child would inherit. Desolate, inhospitable. What kind of world is that for any of our children or grandchildren to inherit? If we ever have a kid one day, I want to be able to look them in the eye and say, I did everything I could to ensure that you grew up in a world worth living in. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm not a scientist, activist, or a policymaker, but I am a storyteller. And I can help amplify the voices of those who are making a real difference. Remind you that we can build that alternative world together. My friends and I made an Emmy-winning series on PBS called Climate California. I talked to some of the visionaries who are leading the way. And they just might change how you see your role in this fight. Because this is a love story. One that's about our collective love for our only home. So subscribe or follow. I'm Charles Loy, and from NorCal Public Media, this is A Fighting Chance. A Fighting Chance is a presentation of the Center for Environmental Reporting with financial support from the estate of Claire Etienne. Partisan politics has a way of making us feel like we're spinning our wheels and going nowhere fast on climate change. Today, I want you to meet Benji Backer, author of The Conservative Environmentalist and founder of a political group called Nature is Nonpartisan. Benji's on a mission to save the climate by trying to bridge a massive divide between liberals and conservatives. In 2025, Benji won a huge victory when President Trump issued an executive order called Make America Beautiful Again, establishing a council to conserve public lands, protect wildlife, and expand access to clean drinking water. The order, however, didn't mention climate change. And the same administration opened up millions of acres of federal lands, including wildlife refuges, to fossil fuel development. So it's in this broader, bizarre political climate that I had my conversation with Benji. To be honest, I was a little bit nervous yesterday when I was like, oh, we have to do this interview tomorrow. Just because there's just so much going on in the world, and I think it would just be hilarious if at the end of this interview, both of us get canceled.
Probably for different reasons, but both sides like to cancel everybody these days.
Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing these days, especially with Nature is Nonpartisan?
What we're trying to do is recreate the nonpartisan movement around the environment that America used to have. I mean, it's crazy that even was possible. The Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, they all passed with nearly unanimous bipartisan support in the 1970s, 80s, 90s. That was the norm. And so we're trying to recreate that movement and show politicians that Americans across the spectrum want common sense solutions, durable solutions that last across administrations, that don't get just undone by the next administration. That's a priority for most people. So it's a tough place to be because on the left, you are trying to work with the right, which is seen as evil, and vice versa. When you're seen by the right as working with the left. And we're living in such partisan times that nobody can get their head out of their own butts about their partisanship. I mean, the tribalism is truly toxic, and both sides feel totally justified in doing that. But at the end of the day, the environment doesn't care about political party, and we need to protect our air and our water and our natural resources and our beautiful landscapes, biodiversity, no matter who's in office. And what's happening right now is not sustainable, no pun intended. It's not sustainable politically, it's not sustainable economically, and it's not sustainable environmentally.
How do we get past partisanship and like work with people who think differently than us without being naive, right? Like there are environmental harms that are being done right now, and at the same time, like it doesn't make sense for us to alienate farmers and rural people and conservatives. But there are also things that environmentalists stand for. I'm curious how you do what you're doing while also ensuring that no one feels like they're giving up core principles.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I'm a conservative second. I'm an environmentalist first. I've always said that, and I'm also an American before I'm a conservative. So there's the prioritization there that I also have, right? Like I share a lot of the same goals as your traditional environmentalist because I am one myself, and I think it's important not to give up the changes that need to be made, and like compromising on your values is not the best way forward. It's compromising on policy to get to a good outcome that needs to happen. Your approach living in the West to help with air quality might revolve around forests and different transportation options than somebody in the Midwest, right? Like they don't have forest fires and they don't have as interconnected of roads and charging stations and everything. And like there's just different realities in different parts of the country for how to solve these challenges. What if we worked on both of those lanes at once to get to the same end goal? That's what I think we need to do. So it's not compromising on your values, it's compromising on the policy so that you actually include another group of people in the discussion that might just have different livelihoods that need to be addressed in the policy in a different way than yours might. When it comes to environmentalism, and I think America in general, is that we need to have a much more holistic approach about who's represented, right? We have minority communities that aren't represented enough. I'm saying that as a conservative, okay? But there's also rural, farmers and ranchers that aren't represented enough either. And so it's not either or, right? You can represent minority communities and ranchers and farmers in the Midwest that are predominantly white, but also struggling to make ends meet and struggling to survive. Both can be represented. You don't have to pick. And I feel like we're just in this black and white thing where it's like you either have to help one group or you have to help the other. We're all Americans. We all share the same resources. We all share the same planet. This is not immigration or abortion, okay? This is not the same. We don't have different outcomes when it comes to saving the environment. I mean, there's a small percentage of people who don't care about it, who want to burn the planet to the ground and just care about themselves. It's a very small percentage of Americans, and it seems larger than it actually is. The majority of us want the same things, just like we want our kids to have healthy and safe communities to be part of. This is something that we all want and that we all have a passionate connection to, no matter if we're poor, rich, black, white, conservative, or liberal. And until we realize that, we're not going to get policies that serve anybody. And when we're in this, like, it only needs to help this group or the other group, it ends up hurting every group.
I think that's a beautiful vision. That's kind of why we're talking to you, because that's something that I think is resonant with a lot of people. But when it comes down to the administration's actions, there are these attacks, right, on climate grants from the EPA. NOAA is getting attacked. The Forest Service. We're opening up national forests for logging, which is a pretty scary thing, especially if you care about biodiversity and trees. Are there any red lines? Are there things that you think that we should be doing to hold policymakers accountable?
Look, I mean, absolutely there should be groups out there fighting the good fight and pushing back against bad policy. What I'm trying to create is an echo chamber of people who are pushing for things to show politicians that Americans want policies that are forward-looking. It's not defense, it's playing offense. It's trying to show politicians that we want things rather than that we don't want things. So it's not that I'm avoiding or ignoring that there are bad things going on. The Trump administration's pullback of all these climate, environment, conservation projects is a symptom of a larger problem. The larger problem is that this has become part of the culture wars and is so partisan, like abortion is, like immigration is, where it is truly a ping-ponging of policies depending on who's in office. And both sides are complicit in that. Right now, the right is very complicit in that, okay? But that will not get any better. That will be the same. We will be in the same place in 10 years. So yes, groups should be out there fighting the good fight to protect different things that they care about and but I'm thinking about 5 years ahead, 10 years ahead. How do we get long-lasting policy that doesn't allow this to happen anymore? And putting Band-Aids over the problem and just pushing back against things that are happening right now is not solving the long-term problem. So I can't do everything. Nature's Nonpartisan can't do everything. I can't save the world alone, and our organization can't save the world alone. We are focused on one thing, and that is making the environment a nonpartisan issue again by pushing for policies and topic areas that Americans want action on, regardless of their political identity, so that we create this space so that this sort of back and forth doesn't exist ever again.
We were discussing this as a team yesterday, and like, how do we approach this? And I think there's like sort of this analogy, like we wouldn't ask an expert on seagrass to fix how we deal with whales or how we deal with communities that are impacted by oil leaks, right? That's not their slice that they're dealing with. Your position is interesting, right? Because you have your like lane, but people expect more than that. But I think it makes sense. This is our little area and our little transect, or whatever you want to call it.
I think the problem with politics today in a lot of ways, and I really appreciate you brought that up, is people are trying to do everything on all issues all the time because they feel like it's almost like this hero mentality of like, I'm going to solve every problem and I'm going to be there for everything that comes up. If I could fight every fight, I would. If I could, be a part of every conversation, I would. If I could field every text and call I get about, hey, can you help with this policy? Can you contact this person? That I really would love to do. If I did that, I would be dead. There's just no possibility to do everything that people want you to do. And it's not just me. It's everybody else that's in this position. And so, I really want to stay focused on building a durable environmental movement for the future. And what that looks like is finding commonalities in a time right now where that doesn't seem possible at all, which makes it ever more important because it's proving the need for this to exist. Right now, this moment, when everything seems like it's in shambles, when everything is chaotic, when every day feels like 10 years, it's the perfect example of why the environment needs to be a nonpartisan issue again. And so, if people expect me to fight every single battle, I will lose every single battle. But if we want to win the long-term battle of making the environment a nonpartisan issue again, I need to stay focused on where we can find common ground, because with a small win on common ground, that creates another larger win on finding common ground. And over time, it'll snowball into the norm again. And that's what my focus is on over the next few years. And so I can't please everybody. But I promise you that when I look back 10 years and when our organization looks back in 10 years and all the people who join us in this movement look back in 10 years, we'll be proud of the fact that we stayed focused, because it's really clear right now, based on polling and also from my travels around the country to pretty much every part of this nation, that people want our forests to be healthy, and they want healthy, resilient forests. They want our communities to be more disaster-proofed for extreme disasters that are coming our way. They want water infrastructure in the West to be prioritized so that we have water access and that we aren't just depleting our resources. They want wildlife and biodiversity to be protected. They want nature to thrive. They want national parks and public lands to be supported and protected so that we can recreate in them, but that we can also make sure that they are protected for future generations. And they also want abundant energy sources. They don't want just solar and wind, but they also definitely don't want just fossil fuels. So this is a common sense approach where the majority of Americans want the same thing on all those topics, every single one of those, and more. And politicians do not hear that ever. They never hear that message ever. So what is the incentive to doing cross-partisan work on those topics that Americans actually want solutions on if no one's talking to them about it? That's what we're trying to change. And so, you could get deeper on all those areas about what to do about those policy topics, but even then there's a lot of agreement. I mean, the only real bipartisan wins that have come in Congress over the last 5 years have been around the environment. And there hasn't even been that many of them, because that's not the norm to get bipartisan wins anymore. But national parks got funded, in 2019 by Congress, 92-8 in the Senate. The Growing Climate Solutions Act, which supported sustainable agriculture for American farmers to help fight climate change, had climate in the name of the bill, passed 92-8. So there is a desire in America for solutions like these, and they won't be prioritized until we raise the voice of America to say, this is actually something that we all want. If you introduce a policy that's bipartisan, let's get it done. Let's not wait. Stop playing the food fighting games and getting on MSNBC and Fox News with talking points about how bad the other side is. You can do that as a secondary thing, but let's focus on getting some good things done.
What would count as like victories for you? Things that you think like you'd be really proud of these accomplishments?
There's two big things. One is general and one specific. In general, I'd love for you to go in 4 years to random person on the street and say, does any side own the environment issue? Is it a partisan issue? And have them say no. Right now, that's not the answer that you'd get from really anybody, right or left. If that national narrative tenor changes in everyday people's minds, we have done our jobs, because that cultural normalization of the issue will create the policy change that we need to make. On the policy side, I would love to look back in 4 or 5 years and say we passed and implemented the largest investment in the environment since Teddy Roosevelt, in terms of the level of wildlife that was protected, the level of public lands that were protected, the level of investment in conservation and disaster proofing America's cities and expanding clean energy, like something at that scale where it's remembered for generations. That won't happen if it's not bipartisan and nonpartisan. And so maybe it'll take more than 4 years, but I don't think it will.
I think that is something that everyone can agree to. So I think that's beautiful. You talked a little bit about trade-offs in your book, and like these 3 categories of affordability, reliability, and emissions numbers. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this seems like a very utilitarian perspective. But you also sometimes weave this into your narrative about the intrinsic value of the beauty of these places. And one thing that we talk about in our series is the intrinsic value of animals and trees and plants. Paco, one of our guests, he talks about how trees have value in and of themselves, even if we didn't breathe their oxygen, right? They have a right to live, to thrive. How do you sort of figure out that balance between utilitarian and more philosophical or respect for other living beings in your calculus?
Well, I think moral and utilitarian both matter, right? Like, we have to have good morals and be good humans and be good stewards of the earth. And we also have to choose policies that benefit the most marginalized people. I mean, the reality is the richest people on the planet are the least affected by climate change, but they're also least affected by the policies in which we deal with climate change, because they can afford whatever solutions we promote. So when I think about the oil and gas worker in Midland, Texas, or the black family in Baltimore, both types of people that I've met over the last few years who are, barely making ends meet a lot of times, and they don't really know where the future of this conversation is headed, they need to be supported too. And if you ask them to spend $6, $7, $8 a gallon at the gas pump, if you tell them that their energy bill is going to triple, if you tell them that, they're not allowed to, have a home because they don't have the right technologies in it or whatever, those are the sorts of things that only rich people can help and be benefited by. So I think it's a balance of the moral and the utilitarian. I am in this fight because I am the world's most avid lover of the outdoors. That is my driver. It's not the utilitarianism of it. My driver is hiking, being outside, being grounded in the outdoors. Talk about the value of trees. I mean, I've had no better moments in my life than sitting in a forest just admiring trees. It's not because they help sequester CO2 or because they help bring life to the earth or whatever. I mean, maybe subconsciously my mind knows all that, and that's why it enjoys it so much. But the peacefulness, the groundedness, all those things about nature are why I'm doing this in the first place. So if anybody knows about the moral aspect, it's definitely me. I totally get that. But we also can't pursue solutions that harm the lowest income people in this country and around the world. People have to feed their families. People have to be able to turn the lights on in their homes. People have to be able to cook, on a stovetop if that's all they have is a natural gas stovetop. Like, these are just things that have to happen. We have to make sure that people are part of the solution and not being villainized in the solutions. And I think a lot of times we think about the climate and the environment in a way that kind of makes people feel like they're the enemy, right? And for somebody barely making ends meet, thinking about climate change and pollution in the atmosphere is kind of the last thing that they're talking about in their day-to-day lives. And that's actually where I found most of the climate denial thought process in this country does not come from hating the environment. It comes from perceiving that every solution around climate change is going to hurt lower income Americans in middle America. It's going to take away their jobs, it's going to take away their communities, they're not going to be able to feed their families. I didn't realize that before getting into this space so heavily in college and starting to visit those communities and actually listen. They love the environment, they want to have solutions, they don't want it to come at the cost of their livelihoods. And so we have to be able to marry the combination of the moral argument and the utilitarian argument if we're going to get the solutions that we want.
You talk a lot about this in your book, about how there's so many regulations that actually create the opposite of the effect that they want. The I-95 bridge collapse as an example of this, where like a Democratic governor was able to like jump past all these environmental reviews and permitting and bidding requirements and just get it done, shows that government can work, right? Can you talk a little bit about this and your views on this?
Look, I mean, we have to build more in the United States and around the world if we're going to protect the environment. It's this weird kind of thing that doesn't really make a lot of intuitive sense, but we have to build more energy, take more resources to help protect the resources that we have and to help save the planet, right? That's a weird dichotomy. But if we can't build it, if it's getting hung up and we can't build a solar field, or we can't build, a nuclear plant, or we can't, build transmission lines, or we can't even build pipelines, like there is a severe harm in the environment when that happens. And that's something that I think finally is coming up for debate. The other thing, though, that I will say is that we can't just develop the entire planet. We have already developed so much of our wild spaces. You look at like what's happening now to the Amazon rainforest and some of these other previously untouched places. It's really scary where we're headed as a world from a wildlife biodiversity standpoint. And a lot of people are like, well, I talked to some people who are like, yeah, but that's just the way it is. But it's like, no, that will end humanity. If we end wildlife and we end biodiversity, we end nature, we also end humanity. It might not happen right away, but it's definitely going to happen. The earth will fight back, and it always does. So let's maximize the places that we've already developed to be more effective and efficient, and not be focused on like expanding into everywhere else. The government can't be in the way of pro-environmental projects, but we can't also overdevelop into natural spaces that have been untouched in the name of abundance. And so there's a certain line that we can't cross, in my opinion.
I think that's something that a lot of people can agree with as well. Talking to Benji, he sounded pretty reasonable. As Benji pointed out, poll after poll shows that we want the same things: clean air, healthy forests, protected wildlife. Sure, we may disagree about how to get there, whether that means nuclear power, renewables, or fossil fuels, and how fast to divest from them. But our problem really isn't just the values, it's the tribalism. Protecting the environment stopped being something that we do together and became just another front in the culture wars. Decades of misinformation, often funded by big oil, helped turn neighbors into opponents. Oil companies, even as they integrated climate science into their internal plans, poured hundreds of millions of dollars into spreading doubt among the public about the link between fossil fuels and climate change. And it worked. Soon, we couldn't agree on reality, and the issue became about tribe against tribe. Meanwhile, the rest of the world isn't standing still. Countries like China are racing ahead to dominate the renewables market, while Americans are still arguing about dinosaur technology. So the real question becomes, if so many Americans actually agree on the same basic things, why does our system keep producing the opposite? And can we overcome the divide fast enough to respond with urgency to the climate crisis? When we come back, Benji and I talk about how we might start bridging that divide. Hey, if you're enjoying this show, consider donating to NorCal Public Media's Center for Environmental Reporting. That's how we get to do more of these. Go to norcalpublicmedia.org/donate. Thanks. Now, back to Benji.
Someone says I'm overly MAGA, and someone also says I'm overly Green New Deal. If I took those both at face value, I'd have the biggest identity crisis in the entire world. So, I can't take every criticism at face value. So there's a balance between hearing criticism and understanding it and trying to work towards being a better person, right, and a better leader and a better pioneer of the movement, and also catering to every criticism that is out there, because that's not good either. That balance is something that I've had to learn, but I think it has informed my transition from running and founding the largest conservative environmental organization to working with a half liberal staff and half liberal board and half liberal target audience of Nature's Nonpartisan. The criticism that I got over the last 7 or 8 years was, as if you truly believe that the environment should be a nonpartisan issue, why are you only focusing on building the bridge with conservatives? And why not build a bridge between the two, right? The two sides. And I think that really has informed where I'm at today, because I still had the same end goal before, and that's largely due to more constructive feedback. We all evolve, the world evolves, and our positions evolve. And I think being open-minded to that and not sticking into this like box that we think we have to be in is absolutely mission critical for this country, because we all kind of put ourselves in these little boxes that honestly don't have any reality to them.
Yeah, and I think that's so true. Like, in that spirit of like trying to just talk to you and being humble. So I looked at your board and I took a very cursory look, but you do have like a former head of the Department of the Interior who worked under the Trump administration, who pushed forward several like pretty pro fossil fuel industry policies. I didn't know what to make of that, and I know that like he's balanced out by like a former executive director of the Sierra Club, but yeah, do you mind explaining that to me a little bit? Because it seems, from my initial point of view, it's like we shouldn't be supporting expansion of fossil fuel at all. Like we should be trying to draw it down, understand that you can't do it overnight, but to have someone like that on your board, like what is sort of the strategy behind that?
Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, I don't think anyone would question us if we had Biden or Obama's DOI secretaries who also expanded fossil fuels during their times in office. What I care about is intention and alignment. David Bernhardt, DOI secretary under Donald Trump, is an avid fisherman, avid hiker, avid lover of the outdoors. The intention is aligned. And the alignment on policy is also there a lot of the time. Like, it's never always going to be there. Just like with the Sierra Club, former CEO of the Sierra Club, Michael Brune, on our board, we don't agree on policy 100% of the time either. But I know that we are aligned in a lot of ways, just like we're aligned with David Bernhardt. David Bernhardt was the driver. He is the reason why our national parks are not in massive debt like they could be, because he prioritized getting that policy done during the first Trump administration to do the biggest investment in national parks, dollars and cents wise, at any time in U.S. history. If I put together a board that I agreed with on everything, I wouldn't have a board. There's not a single person who would be on my board. And not even my dog Mindy would be on the board, okay? Putting unlikely stakeholders together when they have the same end goal and that they have the same intention, that's what I'm bound to do. And I think you can create a lot of unlikely alliances. And, you know, when David Bernhardt disagrees with something that we do as an organization, he probably just won't weigh in, right? When Michael Brune, same thing. Like, he's probably not going to like go and say, yeah, I endorse everything that Nature's Nonpartisan is doing. But when they agree, they're going to be a huge advocate for the things they're trying to get done. And so that's how it should be, right? I might work with you on some things and I might not work with you on others, but we agree on the end goal, we agree on the mission, and that's the most important thing.
In your book, I noticed a lot of writing about how important incentives are and how useful markets are. I'm wondering how you see, or if your thinking has shifted in terms of these other, quadrants like government, commons, household, and market.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got to be a balance of all, and that's, I think, the whole point of mentioning innovation and incentives in the book is just to show that it's not going to just be the government that solves this problem. It will also be people's in their households, and also the marketplace, and also local governments and communities, rather than just, I think we hyperfixate on the federal government's role or the global government, the UN and others. And I think it's just having a diversified mix of solutions is really the only way forward. So I think that would be my top line answer to that. But look, I mean, the market can't do it alone. The government can't do it alone. They all have to work together. And, we can't solve any of these problems without innovation, but we also can't solve any of these problems without the government providing some guardrails, right? So I think it's a balance of everything. And, the right over-fixates on deregulation and capitalism solving every problem. And the left over-fixates on over-regulation and the government solving every problem. So neither one of those are right. And again, I think it kind of feeds into the nonpartisan ethos to think that it has to be that balance.
I wonder how you stand on our culture of consumption. Because, there are a lot of people who are environmentalists who talk about the need for more circular economy steps. We need to fight against planned obsolescence. We need more public transit. We need to get rid of waste as much as possible. And you do mention food waste in your book, but I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about your stance on these other sort of strategies that have nothing to do with energy security, but more about the way that we live our lives, our habits.
Yeah, global consumption of resources has increased 400% since the 1970s. We don't have enough resources on the planet to keep up with that growth. And we need to have circular economy answers to almost every part of our economy. It's not just like the products you buy on Amazon. It's also like car batteries and car parts and all that stuff. Like the fact that we use everything once and then ditch it just shows how stupid humanity can be, because we're so much smarter than that. Like we are so innovative. If we can get to space, if we can create iPhones, if you and I can be zooming over a video right now, we can figure out how to use something twice. Humanity is really bad at only making decisions when something's already gone wrong, right? Like we don't really get ahead of things very often. We're not like, oh, at some point there might be a breaking point with our overconsumption. So I think hopefully we can become a lot smarter about our purchasing habits, because our planet can't keep providing all the resources that it's providing without serious harm.
By the way, this is like the most political segment in the entire series. Like I really hated the idea of getting into politics too much in this series, just because
Well, hopefully this is a safer way to do it.
It is. No, it's just I agree with you. Like once you start talking about labels, right? Capitalism, left, right, people already automatically have their guards up, because they already have a set viewpoint, and it's harder to persuade people or to get people to open up their hearts.
I'm hoping that through time, because I see this as a multi-decade, work stream for me. Like I'm not going away anytime soon.
You can see more of Benji Backer on episode 9 of our Emmy-winning show, Climate California. That episode is about how we can overcome our divides, not just on politics, but on religion and on labor. Watch it on YouTube, pbs.org, or your local PBS station. Thanks for listening to A Fighting Chance. If you enjoyed this show, make sure to like and subscribe. And in the meantime, you can follow me on your favorite social media platform. Until next time, maybe talk to somebody who disagrees with you. They just might surprise you. A Fighting Chance is a production of NorCal Public Media's Center for Environmental Reporting. This episode is produced by senior producer and editor Taylor Kaufman, executive producers Darren Rochelle and Nathan Toby, and me, Charles Loy. It's edited by Jennifer DeFilippo, Hank Liu, and myself, and filmed by Michael Field, Anna Lee, Jeremy Ju, and Anna Loy. Original music and sound engineering by Miguel Brierly. Talent booking and marketing support by Jessica Pilot, Kristen Hayford, and Janae Saunders. Artwork by Ashley Wittenborn with photography by Michael Field. Our digital content manager is Kelly Olson, and our head of TV is Paul Swenson. Special thanks to Matt Allen. For a full list of credits, go to afightingchancepod.org.